So let's start with Chuvashia. Ukrainian drones attacked Chuvashia, striking a facility in Cheboksary. The regional authorities reported, in their usual manner, about 2 drones falling on the territory of the VNIIR-Progress plant, after which, for some reason, production was halted. And now, as the famous tuber-faced Alexander Lukashenko used to say, I'm going to show you the drone crash at the facility. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen clear footage of a strike like this. Take a look.
The bomb is about to go off. Another explosion. Let's watch here.
These were the work of Lyuti-type drones with at least 2 powerful hits. So why is this facility so important for the Russian military-industrial complex? It has specialized defense expertise, meaning it develops electronics and control systems for the S-300, S-400, and S-500 air defense systems, Iskander and Kalibr missiles, Kh-101 and Kh-69 missiles, as well as T-90M tanks, and also for ships and submarines, among others. Production of Kometa navigation modules with crab stabilization. By the way, these are used in Orlan and Shahid drones, as well as in precision-guided bombs. The most important thing is the manufacturing of antennas for Shahid-type drones, which has already been confirmed by our general staff. So in general, the approximate distance to this facility is 980 to 1,000 kilometers. In other words, this is where navigation systems and antennas are actually produced. A strike on the brains of weapons technology and the navigation radio component significantly reduces the Russian army's production capabilities. They also had their own research base there, as well as a testing center. Let's move on to aviation. Another loud night in Ukraine. I think everyone heard it. The savages have gone wild, launching everything they have at Ukraine. Kinjal missiles, Iskander missiles, cruise missiles, drones. They still can't get the revenge for the irretrievably destroyed part of the air component of the nuclear triad. All in all, that night they launched 499 aerial attack assets in total, directed at our positions, 479 strike drones, 4 Kinjal missiles, 10 cruise missiles, and 3 Kh-22 missiles from the Black Sea. Remarkable. That very Kinjal missile, which, according to Putin, no one anywhere in the world could ever shoot down. All 4 Kinjal missiles were shot down. And since their strikes, well, as always, are clumsy and don't really qualify as retribution, they always say, well, this time, this wasn't exactly retribution. Later on, that will be the real retribution. I think many have noticed that they are now launching only a small number of those Tu-95 MS bombers. I believe only 5 of them were launched today. So what happened? One wants to ask. It seems their ranks have been thinned out by the web, and by a kind, powerful, yet fair spider who still has more surprises in store for them. Meanwhile, Putin has lost several more aircraft. He seems to be having some trouble with his air force lately. Aircraft at the Savazleyka airfield were hit. There was a strike there last night in the Nizhny Novgorod region. And this many Ukrainians recognize this name because as soon as it comes up, air raid alerts go off all over Ukraine. MiG-31K aircraft, the carriers of the Kinjal missile, take off from this airfield. Whenever a Kinjal carrier takes off, air raid alerts are triggered all over Ukraine. So at this very airfield that we all know so well, the necessary components arrived and destroyed 2 aircraft, a MiG-31 and a Su-30. Losing 2 units at once is really well. And that's not all. A couple of days ago, an event occurred that perhaps gives us a completely different perspective on aerial combat and the use of aviation. Unexpectedly, a Ukrainian F-16 won an air battle by shooting down a Russian Su-35. And how was this accomplished? Now, this is interesting. Western media have already reported on this, saying that the F-16, so a Russian Sukhoi, was flying over the Sumy region, or rather it was bombing the Sumy region, but the F-16, as part of the defense of the Sumy region, guided by its good friend, an airborne early warning aircraft, let's not specify which one, simply launched an AIM-120 missile and shot down that very Su-35 over the Kursk region, not far from Korenevo. Indeed, I mean, the Russians have always claimed that they have no equals, that the F-16s aren't even in the same league. But here, in this scenario, an F-16 shoots down a Russian Su-35. And what does this actually mean? What does it mean? This is the first documented destruction of a Su-35 carried out by an F-16, and is an extremely important psychological and symbolic moment. So now these Sukhoi, which used to fly around almost with impunity, will realize that an F-16 can just launch a missile and fly right back. That's it. They won't even see where it came from. Psychologically, yes, for Russian pilots, this is a very, very difficult moment. And firstly, this is a demonstration of Ukraine's new tactics, using the F-16 not just as a frontline fighter, but as a platform for hunting deep into Russian territory in combination with intelligence from our good friends. So strikes from a distance will now become routine for the Russians. Now, the sky over their own territory will no longer be safe for the Russians. And these AIM-120 missiles, if the older versions reach 20 or 30 kilometers deep, the new modifications, I think, can reach over 100 kilometers. So now the entire territory of the Russian Federation deep inside is now vulnerable. Yes, the new modifications have a range of 160 kilometers, but we won't be given the very latest versions. But overall, this creates major problems for the Russians. Ukraine is using new unconventional combined and creative approaches. This is evident from Operation Web, and it's also clear from other operations. Just recently, an entire train loaded with Russian equipment was hit with tanks and armored vehicles. The Russians started making a fuss. What? How? Where did it come from? How did it hit? What if now these drones start flying out of the train cars? What if they come from somewhere else? Now, that would be a surprise. You'll find out where they come from when it happens. So Russian propaganda, which built up the myth of total air superiority not just over Ukraine, but even over Russian territory, is now being forced to rewrite its playbook. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you already subscribed, hit the notification bell. Now, the news is going to be absolutely on fire, as they say. I've been waiting for this day. I've waited for 3 days, and today is the 4th day that the oil depot in Engels is burning. Why am I waiting? Because you know how much you love it when the canisters have been blazing for 4 days straight. So everything lines up perfectly. This is the oil depot of the Crystal plant in Engels. Why is it important? Because it's precisely from there that those strategic bombers Tu-160, Tu-95 MS, and others are refueled, the planes that are based at the Engels 2 Air Base. This base is part of the fuel reserve bases and stores critically important supplies. At least 3 tanks there are burning. Well, the task for the Russian emergency services is to wait until they burn out and make sure the fire doesn't spread to the neighboring tanks. That's pretty much the most they can do. There's no point in trying to put out the fire there. Remember when they first started hitting the oil depots, they tried to extinguish the fires, but the explosions were so powerful when one of those tanks loses its seal, it just burns everything within more than a kilometer. So whether you try to put it out or not, it doesn't matter. And a lot of Russian emergency workers have been lost in similar firefighting attempts. So what's noteworthy here? Near the Engels airfield, there's a long-range aviation museum. Well, that makes sense. And it looks like our people have already started leaving comments there. Greetings from the SBU, just wait, and so on. And when I was studying the map, I noticed that this oil depot is about 6 kilometers from the airfield. And that's also where the arsenals are located, where these missiles are stored. The Russians are still storing missiles out in the open. So basically, they unload them, then load them onto the planes, and so on. So you can actually go on Google Maps right now, and let me tell you, to the southeast, there are 2 arsenals there, right near the airfield. Take a look. There are already burnt out hangars just out in the open. You can even see those cigar-shaped rocket cases, containers, and rockets themselves scattered around. In general, it's an incredible sight. There's a lunar landscape where some of the hangars used to be. The beautiful underground storage facilities, apparently, have also partially burned out there. And at the Crystal plant, that very one, previously small but proud drones had flown in there, and there too you can see burned out tanks clustered together. Used to be 60 of them. Now there are far fewer. They're grouped together in 4s, also burned out. In other words, there is a systematic elimination of Russian strategic and tactical aviation underway. And what's more, some truly unconventional and interesting methods are being used. All of this, in turn, provokes fairly predictable responses from the Russian Federation. I mean, they throw everything they've got at them, then report that all targets have been hit, all airfields destroyed, all instructors eliminated, but then something happens again. And suddenly Russia no longer has a significant portion of the air component of its nuclear triad. So what else is important? For Russians to talk about successful retaliatory strikes, they need video evidence of successful target hits, although they've managed without that for quite some time now. Everything is destroyed there and so on. Ukraine no longer has any planes left, but the footage shown by the security service in Operation Web Guard Service, as we call it here, and let me remind you, new footage from Operation Web was recently released. The Russians will never get footage like that, not even close. But we will, because Web is just the beginning, and that's not all for today. In Russia, the Kazan state gunpowder plant was attacked. This is one of the key defense enterprises that produces gunpowder and propellant charges for artillery, for Kalibr and Iskander missiles, and for aviation. So there's a lot going on, right? We're just sitting here bored. What did old man Kabayev used to say? We're just sitting here bored. We need some action. Well, here's your action soon. You'll have a lot less aviation. By the way, friends, those who launch these wonderful drones need your help. Let me remind you, we have a major fundraiser for our old, good, and important friends at the Global Drone Academy, which trains thousands of UAV operators. They have trained more than 6,500 people on various drones. The instructors are top-notch, and the training is excellent. Units quickly and efficiently get their own UAV operators. So I'm asking you to support this fundraiser. Right now, there's a much greater need for operators. There's a higher demand for consumables, and batteries wear out faster. And as you know, the first time you launch it, it might crash and break, and all of this, well, it's not cheap. So please support the Academy. And right now, there's a large combined group of really awesome guys and girls studying there. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. The link to the fundraiser is also in the comments. There you'll also find the Academy's card number. And if you want to help from abroad, there are PayPal details as well. A huge thank you, as always. Let me remind you, not long ago, we completed a fundraiser for 2 million for the Freedom of Russia Legion. That's incredible. You are the coolest people I know, and I'm always immensely grateful to you. An extremely interesting piece of news has appeared in the New York Times. Now we're moving on to the topic of China as our friend, but it seems maybe not so much. The New York Times has obtained access to an 8-page document. The cyber group ARES was the first to get access to it. Not only to this document, but they also passed it on to the New York Times. And in it, there's an FSB document that was reviewed by 6 Western intelligence agencies. Its identity, authenticity, and originality have been confirmed. So look at what's actually happening within the FSB. The FSB calls China an enemy that is preparing to make territorial claims against Russia. Despite Putin's official statements about this unbreakable friendship, what kind of friendship is that, really? Do you remember the parade? How he sat there fidgeting with his little hands, whispering and explaining things to the one who was actually presiding over the parade, Xi Jinping, explaining who was there and what was going on. Basically, he was like an entertainer for Xi Jinping at that parade. And everyone saw it, Lukashenko, then the CSTO members, whom he seated farther away, and some African leaders as well. So basically, it was this whole gathering of shady types and the poor all watching from the sidelines as Putin humiliated himself in front of Xi Jinping. So this document is extremely interesting. According to the publication, this is a classified FSB unit that has not been publicly mentioned before, and it directly refers to China as an enemy and warns of a serious security threat coming from the eastern neighbor. According to the document, Chinese intelligence agencies are actively trying to recruit Russian agents, gain access to military technologies, and lure away disillusioned Russian scientists who are underpaid. But that makes sense, that's normal. The FSB also claims that China is monitoring the actions of the Russian army in Ukraine in order to study Western weaponry and tactics. Oh, I think it's not just Western weaponry they're interested in. Probably, among other things, with the goal of studying Russian weaponry and tactics as well. Why do you think that is, I wonder? In addition, according to the Federal Security Service, Chinese academic circles are laying the groundwork for making territorial claims against Russia, and Chinese intelligence agencies are conducting reconnaissance in the Arctic using scientific institutes and mining companies for this purpose. What a surprise. So Beijing is actively trying to recruit Russian agents and scientists, especially those who are dissatisfied with funding or the war. Plus, people who have family ties or are in relationships or are married to Chinese citizens. So this kind of recruitment is taking place. Preparation of territorial claims. Chinese scholars are searching for traces of China's historical presence in the Far East. But there's really no need to search there. And really, what's the point? Putin doesn't need any kind of historical, here are the Pechenegs, here are the Polovtsians, here are the Delawares, here are the Hurons, here you go, here's a folder tied with a ribbon. So great, that's how Putin operates. This document was handed over, and wait, there's more. Before the war with Ukraine began, the FSB launched an operation to protect against Chinese espionage. That's not a nice way to treat your friends. Plus, the FSB monitors and tracks users of the Chinese messenger WeChat, even going so far as to hack their devices. In other words, they are constantly collecting data on those who use this Chinese messenger. They gather messages, contacts, other information, and so on. So that's how it is. And let me remind you, by the way, there was a whole spy mania in Russia that happened when designers and engineers, including those involved with hypersonics, were targeted. But in those cases, most likely pressure was used as a warning to others. So basically, those who gave lectures at Chinese institutes were accused of treason. And the accusations were so severe that one of the scientists died 2 days after being arrested. But on the other hand, if you're developing hypersonic technology for Russians, well, that's what you get. You can't. You might be an excellent scientist, a developer, but you have to understand what your work is being used for and how. So I don't feel sorry for any of them, scientists or not. If your missiles are flying, if your technologies are being used against civilians, well, it's only natural. By the way, we've talked more than once about how when the Soviet Union attacked Finland and it turned out that its army wasn't all that mighty, after all, they also planned to take it in just 2 or 3 days. Oh, God, yes, like there would be a parade in Helsinki and everything would go as planned. And the Finns really gave them a beating back then. A big shout out to Finland for its very courageous stance, both then and now, and to everyone who is helping Ukraine. So at that time, Stalin's friend and partner Hitler was standing by, closely watching this war and drawing his own conclusions. He was jotting everything down with his little black pencil. And in this document that the Ares Group obtained and published, it specifically states that China, Putin's friend and partner, Xi Jinping, or rather, not a friend and partner, but his senior, yes, meaning the master of the vassal, is doing exactly the same thing right now, standing by, watching closely from the sidelines, preparing historical territorial claims, and studying in real time the weak points of the Russian army and its weaponry. But there's another point. On top of everything else, Putin is also in a crippling economic dependence on China. So that's how it is. Remember, Putin recently talked about how members of his family said, the little members of my family, well, in your case, they all must be little anyway. Who are they? I don't know who he was talking about his little ones or some other members of his family, but he said they already speak Chinese. That tells you something. Later, so they can snag a decent position under the new master. So the FSB document is a very alarming signal, and I think it's a very, very important direction that needs to be worked on. So it all looks rather bad. Will China really wait until Russia is at its weakest and then seize some territories? And do you think anyone there will actually resist? In a day over there, for sure, in just 1 day, the Far East would be gone, and that's it. Historical justice restored. And how can we talk about China without mentioning Cantonese Opera? I just came across a truly wonderful piece of news. A Cantonese opera show lasting 3.5 hours is called Trump, the President's Twin. It was performed at the Shikui Theater. And, well, Cantonese opera is basically where some major events are played out in an operatic form. But maybe it won't seem like traditional opera to you. I watched a fragment of it. It's not just Trump in it, Zelensky is there too. So in the first act, just so you know, Trump is abducted by aliens who arrive from Mars. And in the next scene, he argues with Volodymyr Zelensky over clothing. Like, why aren't you in a suit? And then he shoots him with a water gun. It's quite an interesting concept. But at the beginning, the audience is shown a dream of Trump's daughter, Ivanka, where her father has a twin brother named Chuanpu from China. Well, how about that? But by the way, Kim Jong-un is also there, in a traditional, somewhat mysterious Eastern style that's not always clear to us. They show what, in the author's opinion, is really happening. So there's an interesting story with Kim Jong-un. He comes to the US, he's happy, as always. And Since he loves Coca-Cola, Donald Trump teaches him how to make money selling Coca-Cola at home. Who would actually be able to buy it there is unclear, of course, but that's beside the point. And Trump teaches him saying, I'm the greatest businessman. Let's make Coca-Cola with ginseng. And Kim Jong-un just tears him to pieces. He goes absolutely crazy with joy. That's how it is. Even though the production looks strange to us, and as for the martial arts, it's got that traditional hyperbolized bam bam bam, even more over the top than in Indian films. But the meaning is extremely interesting. Trump will trade with anyone, anything, anytime. And if you want to see the photo scenes, I could get banned here for copyright. Just Google Cantonese Opera Trump. So there's these Chinese lookalike, a movie. And lately, Elon Musk has really gotten caught in some serious trouble. Honestly, I even started to feel a bit sorry for him. First, he was kicked out of the White House, then he got into some kind of conflict. Now, I'll show you. Now he's defending Trump again. Then he was given a blank check. The Minister of Finance, quite seriously. Turns out the Minister of Finance, Scott Bessent, gave Elon Musk a blank check. So right there in the White House, they had some kind of argument and something upset Elon Musk and he wanted to use a rugby move, his shoulder, Uto shove or hit Bessent somehow. Although it's not entirely clear why he did that. For that, Bessent just punched him and gave him a black eye. And when I saw Elon Musk already beaten up with that black eye, I actually felt a bit sorry for him. But, and before that, I told you how he said that there is evidence that Donald Trump is involved in the Epstein case. It's a terrible case. I've talked about it. But then, right away, he starts defending Donald Trump again. I don't know what's going on with him. Well, maybe that's just his way. By the way, he himself talked about his illness. I don't know if it's a confirmed diagnosis or not, but with a father like that, it's no wonder. I recently found out that the Forum for the Future in Russia 2050 is being held there by Lavrov, the Orthodox oligarch Malofeev, completely unhinged, who financed those illegal armed groups, and then Russian troops in Donbass and Crimea. So basically, it's like a satanic ball has gathered there. And guess who's speaking there? Elon Musk's father, showed up, posted a photo from Red Square looking pleased. Yeah, but the old man is, of course, absolutely out of his mind. Just so you know, I watched a short interview with him. Maybe you remember that episode? He was asked, so, are you proud that your son became the richest man in the world? He's got all this technology, rockets flying with SpaceX, Tesla, and so on. And you know what he answered? He dismissed it. First, he got angry, and then he belittled him as much as he could. He said, I was successful myself. I was popular myself. He's just a continuation of me, and so on. Then he accused him of the fact that due to his negligence, a child died. There were some issues related to the nanny. And he said that it was his fault, that he doesn't pay any attention to raising his children at all. And do you pay attention to raising your children? Do you know how Elon Musk pays attention to raising his children? His two youngest daughters are from the daughter of his second wife. So he has a wonderful relationship with his stepdaughter, you could say. Racist. He's always making statements about white supremacy. When he was defending Elon Musk, that gesture, he said, he even played with black kids. He even played with the servants' children. Can you imagine? In short, this completely unhinged, immoral Elon Musk went there to give lectures. I'm sure that in Russia, there's a special department for monitoring scumbags, and as soon as they saw him, they were like, now that's a real scumbag. He would definitely sell his own mother for money right now. If we make him an offer, he definitely won't refuse to come to Moscow. That's exactly how it is. Director Oliver Stone, go ahead, get his son a job at Russia Today. He'll rush over to make films about Putin. There you go. Who else is there? Steven Seagal. That guy is completely out of it. Let's bring him over here. But Gérard Depardieu, for example, at first, yes. But then, he didn't completely lose his conscience, so that's that. Honestly, I'm glad that the most hopeless characters are all, in one way or another, bought up by Russians. As they say in the well-known joke, I've been gathering you ghouls here for years. That's how it is.